Does prominence select for good behavior? That's a question I recently asked myself. And I think the answer is not that obvious, because first we have to define what prominence actually is. So there are different kinds of prominence, I would say. There is the classic being famous, there is prominence, there is, so famous, of course, the word is fame, then prominence, but you can also be infamous. So basically you are famous for something that has a negative connotation to it. So now the question is, if also, no, the question isn't there yet. Because the question in general is, what is the outcome? What is the outcome of people? Or rather, basically if you take a given person that is not prominent, so within the whole human species, just take a random person, and then how likely is it that this person is above average in terms of behavioral traits? So if we would want to judge every single action of a person, and then we would determine how good the behavior of a person is, and we could use criteria such as how altruistic this person is and how egoistic this person is. With altruistic being helping others and egoistic only helping yourself. Of course, there is an argument to be made that altruism actually is just an evolutionary design that is basically also egoism, but it's kind of pretending to help others in order to then help yourself because you get something back in return. So this reciprocity principle we have with others, and also often called a social contract, is what keeps us together. So what helps us together as a human species, but also what helps us on an individual basis. Of course, there is also the argument to be made that we as an individual are basically not the driving force, but the genes are actually the driving force that then get selected. So the question is therefore not so much, do good people, so of course there is also the question, do people who are prominent have better behavior than average? But what you also could ask is there an evolutionary advantage to being good? Or to then, if you are good, is there an evolutionary advantage that means that you then are more prominent, and with more prominence comes maybe a better trade-off in terms of evolution, not a better trade-off, but a better result in terms of evolutionary fitness. So how many of your genes make it into the next generation? So now, first, I think we want to kind of discuss the correlation between, or the potential correlation or the potential link between prominence and good behavior. So the general question here is, if you, as I said, take a random person, or if you take a random person of people that are prominent, people that more people know about. So, as I just said, I think we can define prominence by how many people do know about this person, but this of course has a bad side to it, and this negative side to it is that we also know, for example, famous criminals who are rather infamous. So the question should not be because the thing is that is currently happening is, if we already select for prominence and not for also other factors that also make people knowledgeable, not knowledgeable, but knowable to other people, so that other people basically know these people, then we are kind of pre-selecting already the good behavior, because we are basically not selecting the bad behavior by not defining something as infamous. So if we leave out the subset of people that are known by other people, but that actually are infamous, then we are leaving out a portion of the population that has a higher tendency for bad behavior. So if we take out this portion, we are basically skewing the ratios, because if we then take the good behavior people that also happen to be known by other people, and we take the normal all people, the set of normal all people, then the problem is that in this set, the bad behavior people that are prominent are they're basically in the set still, and in this set we have defined the set as something where infamous people cannot be in. So therefore, by this definition, by taking somebody that is prominent but not infamous, we are basically pre-selecting, and therefore the outcome is that there is a higher likelihood that if you take a random sample out of these prominent people, that they display good behavior over time. So now, the final thesis, I would say, even though I didn't really answer the question, I think I really dodged around the question a little bit, but the final answer, I think, is good behavior is probably rewarded by being more prominent. Think of this as a friends game. The more friends you have, the more you're known to people for good reasons. And if you don't have these friends anymore, you're probably not known, you're still known to these people, but you don't have them as friends anymore. So therefore, prominence is basically how positively, or prominence positively, so the positive side of prominence is basically, could be explained by how many people have a positive association towards you. And this positive association now does not necessarily have to be an association. It stems out of personal experience from person to person, but it can also stem out of just you, so a random person thinking the other person has money, and therefore thinking the other person is successful, and therefore having a slightly positive connotation. But even though there are many different questions and also variables that have to be discussed, the main point I wanted to discuss is, if a given person displays good behavior, or rather, the question I actually wanted to ask is backwards. If you take a random person that is prominent, let's take a random famous actor, for example, and then you want to determine, is this person above average positively in terms of their behavior, or is it average or below average? So how likely is it that the person is above average? And the thesis I had is that prominent people, famous people, but then of course you are also including the infamous people, therefore I am choosing the word prominent, are basically more positively in terms of their behavior. And the question I ask myself is, why is this the case? And I think it is the case, that's kind of now the personal opinion part of this, is that, of course, all of this is personal opinion, but what I think is this. If you have a selection process, so basically you take 100 people, and these 100 people now could be prominent for something. An average person probably does not have the best behavior. An average person has a normal behavior. This means maybe they are doing things that we consider as a society bad. In many cultures, there is actually, for example, cheating. Cheating on somebody as a partner, for example, is considered something that is bad. Now, if we take a look at presidents, for example, whenever somebody catches them cheating on their wife, for example, then there is basically a public outlash towards this person, and often these people resign. So basically, what the thinking I had was, the more you are known to other people, the more attention you have of other people, from other people, also from media, but media is also just made by people, I guess, then the more likely it is that somebody actually discovers your mistakes. Because there are just more people looking into your mistakes, and more people maybe potentially trying to harm you, maybe harming you by finding out something that they then can tell others, and the others then have a more negative association towards this person. So the people that are still prominent and have not been cancelled, to take one of the newer words for this kind of selection process into account, these people that are still prominent, that are basically the survivors. So if you take the current prominent people and you take a certain likelihood of a scandal hitting this person, then every scandal that is big enough to actually make this person infamous knocks them basically out of the subset of prominent people. So therefore, the ones that make it, the ones that are still prominent and not infamous, then are the ones that are still good, that haven't been discovered. And of course, the more positive behavior compared to negative behavior you display, the more positive the actions you actually do are, the less likely it is that someone will find something that is negative. So therefore, all the people that are still here, all the politicians that are still here, are the survivors. And therefore, probably they are, in terms of behavior, a little bit better than the normal guy. Of course, we have also to take into account that there are different variables, such as how well can you basically cover up potential mistakes? How intelligent are you, and therefore are likely or more likely to actually be able to cover up all of these mistakes? How able are you to put yourself in other people's shoes and actually realize what the perception of others of you might be, and things like these. But the part on which I wanted to concentrate is just the part that is actually the behavior itself. Of course, the behavior can also have bad intentions, good intentions, but the behavior itself is basically the behavior itself. If we just take a look at every single action, then maybe sometimes it doesn't matter so much what the original intention is. Of course, this goes into how can we judge a person and into the different philosophies like utilitarianism, if it's called like this, and other philosophies. But I don't want to get into these because I just wanted to explore whether famous people, prominent people, are better people.